Well, we tried to reform that, and we're still trying to reform that. And I want to give you an update as to where that stands. We helped draft legislation. As I say, we retained a lobbyist. We sent out letters. We had a hearing that was held by the House in April. We testified. I testified. We had a great turnout by patients here in Texas. A number of the autism patients showed up at the hearing because in Texas, every single doctor who treats autism has been harassed and investigated by the Texas Medical Board because insurance companies don't like that. And this is kind of interesting now that a number of states around the country have passed autism bills to try to protect patients and to ensure that the insurance companies will reimburse care for autism. And those bills have been passed, but there has not been reform of the medical boards. So what's going to happen is the insurance companies, even though they're supposed to pay for autism treatment in a number of states, they're just going to report those doctors to the medical boards in those states. And the medical boards are then going to do the bidding of the insurance companies, and they're going to go after those doctors. So there's still, even though these bills have been passed, and a lot of the autism families are rightly thrilled by this development, there's still going to be a problem of care, and that anyone who tries to treat autism is going to be risking his license with the medical boards. And again, this problem of innovation. You can't get innovation when insurance companies are paying the bills because insurance companies don't want to pay for anything that's new. And it's going to take innovation to address the problem of autism. And so it's going to have to come out of cash practices, I think, to a certain extent. Okay, I testified in the House before the House committee. I went through the number of things that we sought to reform here in Texas. One is the confidential complaint problem. And in our model bill, we ensured that any complaint filed with the Texas Medical Board would be turned over to the doctor, and the doctor could see a copy of the complaint. And that reform alone would dramatically end a lot of the abuses that we're seeing where people are competitors and insurance companies and disgruntled neighbors, whoever, are having complaints filed against doctors. If that copy of that complaint were turned over to the doctor, then the doctor would have a cause of action if it were done maliciously. And one of the legislators on the committee, she said to me while I was testifying, she said, well, if someone is filing complaints maliciously, then the doctor can just sue that person and can collect for bad faith complaint filing. And she was right, except the doctor can never see the copy of the complaint. And even if the doctor sues, the medical board will still not turn over a copy of the complaint. And she was horrified by that. These legislators didn't realize this, that the medical board conceals those complaints, and everybody knows, everyone who games this system knows that there's this shroud of secrecy, and so you can manipulate it behind the scenes. The dental board in Texas doesn't do that. You go on the website for the Texas Dental Board, and it says right there, we turn over a copy of the complaint to the dentist. Whatever you file us, we turn over to the dentist. It says right there on the website. Well, if that works for dentists, why aren't they doing it for doctors? Well, our reform would take care of that. Put an end to the anonymous complaints. The Texas Medical Board will accept anonymous complaints. There's no name on it. They'll act on anonymous complaints. I mean, that's an outrageous violation of due process, right? Complain anonymously. The court system doesn't tolerate that. We don't have anonymous lawsuits. We don't have anonymous witnesses. Now, if someone's going to make an accusation against somebody else, someone's going to file a complaint, they got to state their name. We don't know who it is. Oh, that's someone who works for an insurance company. Oh, that puts that in a different light now. Conflicts of interest against board members. Our model legislation puts an end to that. We had on the Texas Medical Board, one of the top disciplinarians was taking monthly checks from Blue Cross Blue Shield while he was serving as a disciplinarian on the Texas Medical Board passing judgment on doctors. That should not be happening. So we have that in our legislation, to have conflict of interest laws that apply in other areas of government, to have it also apply against the Texas Medical Board. The hearing went very well, and the House Public Health Committee passed out our legislation by a vote of 10-1. Even though the Texas Medical Association testified against these reforms. And there is the real problem. The Texas Medical Association stands up there at these legislative hearings and they claim they represent 44,000 physicians in Texas. That's the first words out of their mouth, first paragraph. Yeah, we're here to represent Texas doctors. They act like they represent all Texas doctors. And then they oppose these reforms. And I went on their website and looked at what they're saying about the legislative session, and it certainly is an odd collection of bills that they support in the legislative session. If any of you are members of the TMA, they have their Capitol Hill Day. I think it's like the first Tuesday of every month, where doctors go up there in white coats, and the TMA sort of tells them what to do and so on. But look at what the TMA actually supports and ask yourself, how does this help me as a practicing physician in Texas? Who is setting the agenda of the TMA? One of their biggest successes that they bragged about, virtually nothing passed in this legislative session. I'll get to that in a second. But they bragged about how they supported a bill that enables Texas to exchange immunization information with other states during a public health emergency. This was like their top priority, that the bill passed so Texas can exchange immunization information with other states during a public health emergency. Who set that as like the top concern of doctors in Texas? It gets stranger. An obesity bill. They lobbied to address obesity. Well, that's a concern of insurance companies. I mean, that's a concern of doctors, too, on an individual basis, but it's insurance companies who are going to care about obesity because they're paying the bills. Well, we got the TMA doing the bidding for insurance companies. Smoke-free Texas, that's another thing. That's a concern of insurance companies. A mental health bill. Taxes and public school finance. Ownership of healthcare facilities. Well, which side are they on? Freestanding emergency departments. Well, in terms of reforming the medical board, which you would think would be their top priority, not only were they not helpful, they were working against us. They testified against it, and we think they work against us behind the scenes, too. And we found that there's a bit of a revolving door with the Texas Medical Association and the Texas Medical Board and the Federation of State Medical Boards, which sits here in Dallas. And the current president of the Texas Medical Association used to serve on the Texas Medical Board, and then he spent some time at the Federation of State Medical Boards, and now he's head of the TMA. Well, the Texas Medical Board is adversarial to doctors. They're on the other side. I mean, we're not going to get reform in Texas unless it can be clarified that the TMA is on the wrong side, and that when they testify, they're testifying on the wrong side. They don't represent doctors, in my opinion. And we need to clarify that and expose that more, I think.